Hello and welcome to this edition of our monthly Make and Takes. So, in this Make and Take session, we're going to focus on exit tickets. So, lots of templates, ideas, some things to consider as you make an exit ticket, and some inspiration across the way. So, this is a later recording because we forgot to record the actual training, but we do have some of the resources that we developed in the session within this recording so you can still access those and learn from them. So our plan for today is to really focus on what an exit ticket is and its benefits. So I think most of us are probably familiar with an exit ticket, but essentially it's a really quick way for you to gather information about your students' understanding. So a good check for understanding, a reflection, a way for students to show what they know. And as a teacher, it's helpful for you to do it so you know what to do for the next day or for the next activity that relates to the topic at hand. Think of it as a formative assessment, not necessarily a summative, a bigger, more time-consuming assessment that's a summation of the learning, but something that is measuring where they stand on that particular day and time. So they're good for data collection, good for your students to reflect as well. And there are some helpful things to know as you plan an exit ticket. Really think about the vehicle that you want to use for your exit ticket and the amount of time that you want to put aside for this type of activity. So in the session today, the idea is that we make an exit ticket, take an exit ticket, and you see some of the templates and examples that are out here. And they vary from no tech to high tech, which is a nice thing. You can do exit tickets on paper. It can be hand signals, even if you really want to get pretty easy with it. But a lot of the ones I'm going to show you today, because this is a technology training, do focus a little bit more on tech tools that can ease your process in making these. So the tools that I will include in the session today include Google Slides, Canva, which is a graphic design tool, Google Forms, and Google Jamboard, if that's more of your jam, versus Google Slides. So the first thing you need to do when considering your exit ticket, and really before you design any type of learning environment activity, is what am I trying to measure? Ultimately, think back to your learning goal for the day and consider what is a way for me to monitor progress towards achieving that goal? And how can I turn that into some type of prompt or activity that students can respond to that gives me information to see, have they mastered it? Do we need to do a little bit more review, or are we ready to move on? So really look at your state standards, look at your goal for the day, write your student-friendly goal, and think about what is a way I can tie up my activity nice and neat with an exit ticket activity that connects back to that goal. All right. The next thing is to really focus on creating this. So think about, what do I want to use to deliver this exit ticket formative assessment to my students, and what makes the most sense? So I always say it's important that you start with the goal first versus the tech tool, just because some tools, if you just integrate them for their own sake, it might actually create more barriers than remove them for your students. So if I know that I'm wanting to see how my students understand some vocab terms, maybe it makes sense to give them an exit ticket that's more of a form of a quiz type of model. So I could do that on paper, or I could use a Google form. If I'm wanting for students to kind of explain or describe something, then maybe I give them something that lends itself to more of that creative expression versus like a multiple choice type of quiz tool. So really think about what makes the most sense and how can my students show their understanding in multiple ways and what really aligns with that learning goal. So some examples here are the tools that I mentioned at the beginning. So slides, Canva, Jamboard. You can certainly use paper, Google Forms. You can use Pear Deck as well, which is a tool that works within Google Slides. Or you can decide I'm not going to use any tech or any tools, and that's where you can kind of do some conversations in class, turn and talk, which won't necessarily give you tons of data for the whole class. But if you are pressed for time, that is kind of an unofficial way for you to do an exit ticket. All right. And then think about, how do I want to provide feedback to my students on these exit tickets? So maybe that is more of a verbal confirmation. Maybe it's the next day you talk about how everyone did after you review those responses. If you did this more at the end of class, maybe it's stickers that you put on their exit tickets or digital stickers on their slides and whatnot. Maybe it's audio, video feedback. I've seen where some teachers actually set it up to where the next day when students are doing like a stations activity, they have almost like a deli lunch counter where you have a number each student gets a number, and then the teacher calls up the number the students have, and they have a little individual conference with the teacher. And I'm not going to spend time on this today, but if you wanted to look at a tool that could support you in that kind of deli lunch counter number system, Classroom Q is a technology tool that does just that. You can have students sign up to talk with you, and you can even have like bins of resources as well, where students can kind of practice, you talk with them, and give them some feedback in those senses. All right. So that is kind of the framework to do, foundation to lay before you get into actually building the exit ticket. And now I'm going to show you some inspiration to spark your creativity before we go in and we actually build an exit ticket ourselves. So here are some examples of exit tickets. And if you're curious about where I pulled some of these from, they are in the speaker notes. When I get out of presentation mode, you can see that, but you have it on your view right now. So this is a really simple one. This could certainly be printed, but it could also be something that you put like on the Google slide, like what it is right now. This is what this was built in, and give students their own copy of it where they have editing access and can type it up and send it back to you. So just asking students, what is something that they felt like they really shined in that lesson, or something they felt like they really mastered, and then grow is something they felt like they need more practice with, or something that's an area of improvement. So again, this is really adaptable to pretty much any type of lesson goal. I would just say that if you want to use this exit ticket, make sure you put the goal maybe at the top of the slide so students know that's what they're tying this into and what they're reflecting on. This is another example where you give students about 5 minutes to do this. You could put a timer on your screen. This is more of an informational slide, and what students would do is pull up one Google slide, a blank presentation on their device, their Chromebook. And what students are doing on this one is they're talking about like the message of a story. But essentially what students are doing is adding a phrase, a picture, and putting it on the slide to show their understanding. So this is a little bit more tech heavy. This is one that doesn't have to use technology at all. It's just a brain dump. So this could actually even be a bell ringer as well when you have students do this for the day before. And this is actually from another collection of formative assessments that I have, and it's in some of my newsletters if you're curious about them. But a brain dump is just asking students, what is everything that you know or that we talked about related to the goal or the topic for the day? So they just write it all out. They can add illustrations. This one really lends itself to some creativity. If you have some students who are sitting there and are like, I don't remember anything from the lesson, or I don't know what to do to get started, give them a couple of keywords to get the juices flowing and creativity going, and then they can take it and run from there. And this could be something that maybe they do a turn and talk first, and then they work on it individually themselves. Another example here is a graffiti wall. This could be more of a whole class type of exit activity. Is the teacher, it's nice if you set this up, if you teach middle school or high school and have different mods or class periods of students, then maybe have a separate piece of paper for each class period. So you have this all captured in an organized way. But you'll take large pieces of paper, and every student gets a marker, writing utensil, and they go around the room and they create a little bit of artwork or a phrase about the question that you have in the middle of the paper. So that's where you write the question based on your goal or your focus for the day, and students respond to it. I would say maybe lend this to a more open-ended question so you don't get students just writing the same thing over and over again. But this could be a really good way for students to connect their ideas and build upon each other's, and is a nice big artifact of student learning from this. Word Wizard is kind of a fun one. Again, this could be a paper, or this totally could be digital. If you want some digital templates, I have some examples here. But what students do is they think about the topic or the goal that they focused on in class that day. So going back to what you really do as the teacher when you set this up. And then they think about some of the key words that stood out to them from that lesson. And the next thing is they connect those words with lines, illustrations, and then talk about why those words connect to each other. So if you're doing this digitally, they could type it out on a Google slide, and maybe they do a really quick audio or video recording that explains their rationale. If you're doing this more of the paper pencil route, they could certainly write out sentences. They can even do that, I guess, with a Google slide. And then they can maybe explain it verbally to you or across the whole class. So if you're wanting a template for this, this is a little bit more of a different activity, but it could certainly work for this one. And this is just hexagonal thinking. This has certainly more words than like the 5 to 8 that I listed on the exit activity. So this could be much lengthier, but students would type out their keywords that they come up with in the lesson, and then this is where they explain their thinking. But up to you on how you would like to do that. Sculptor, this is definitely not a tech example unless you want them to record a video or something. But for an exit ticket's sake, I like to think of it as being something that's pretty quick and on the fly. So this would take a little bit of planning and supplies, but ask students to create a model that represents the big idea or a concept that was studied in the class. They can write out an explanation of what they made and why, and so on and so forth. So this is something that you would certainly need to model for students beforehand, but could be a fun option for students. Here is more of a technology focused template that you could utilize. So ask students what stuck with them in the lesson, what didn't go so well and why, or even this could be something that's more talking about their experience during the week, but I like to think of exit tickets as connecting back to the content area. So this could be an example of that. Could always print this too. More examples here. This is using technology. So students could use a GIF, maybe because some of the GIF websites are blocked for students appropriately because sometimes there's some inappropriate stuff on there. Instead, maybe students make a picture and put it on there. They could find an image that describes how they were feeling. Maybe they take a picture of themselves and put it on there. You can do it on their Chromebook because they have a built-in camera, but that is another way that they can show how they felt like the lesson went. And they give some feedback here on how they thought they did and something they want to do better next time. This could even be something that as a teacher you use as well. So if I'm thinking about administrators, if you're watching the session, or those of you who are instructional coaches, maybe this is a way for you to encourage teachers to reflect on their teaching and learning, especially some of your first year teachers where, you know, they're still building their lessons and their activities. And when they go back the next year and look through, this gives them some documentation on how things went and how they can change it. It won't take very much time for them to do. This is just a little fun one. This is a drag and drop. So students would need editing access to this deck. You could certainly use other things other than tacos, but students drag it over to the corner here. You could build this on Jamboard as well. That would work really well because Jamboard is very much like drag and drop type of feel, more so than Google Slides in the first place. But students get this, they drag and drop it. If you wanted, you could also use Pear Deck for this, and maybe students circle instead of drag and drop how they felt in the lesson. And Pear Deck is just something that's super easy. Students join with a code or a direct link that you give them, and they're all set. And you get that feedback on the teacher dashboard, and it's nice and pretty. And there's some graphs and tables and things that help organize it. So if you're using any type of Google slide for an exit ticket, I would recommend just using Pear Deck to make your life easier. All right, this is a sketch and tell. So some drawing and illustrating that you could use here. Students sketch or they insert an illustration and then they type out an explanation here as well. So even more, here's an example of a Pear Deck one. Students can write and type. Keeps on going. So many examples here, ways to bring in other tech tools. It just depends on what your aim, again, what your goal is, what you're trying to measure, and then how much time you have to do this. Okay? So just some examples to get you going. So now that we've looked at some of those templates and hopefully you feel pretty inspired, we can start building. So the link that is on my deck here is an example of a place where you can go and get ideas and where I would love for you to add your own example into this slide deck. So this slide deck is not the same one that we were just in. The one that we were just in, you don't have editing access to, but you do have editing access to this shared deck, because this is the place where you make an exit ticket and you take an exit ticket. So you add your own and then copy someone else's that's on here. All that I ask of you is that you do not delete or type over someone else's work. And if you do add something that's your own here, add your name to the speaker note so we can give credit where credit is due. So here's an example that someone gave in the session when we did this live and had people on this training. Someone brought up that they love to do classroom screen for their exit tickets. And it basically, the students scan this QR code and they get this little prompt that asks them, how prepared are you for the next quiz? You can type out your other types of questions here, and it gives some data there for the students. Now, there is some new things with classroom screen. There is a paid version now, so I think you get more customization options with the paid version to where you can type out more of these exit ticket prompts, but it still is an option for you to use. Here's another example from the session. If you just want a whole collection of exit ticket prompts, then you will want this slide deck that is linked here. This was all made in Google Slides, so this means that you can use just the slides themselves and send students forced copies of it. It means you can print it, means you can assign it in It's Learning or soon to be Canvas. Also means that you can use Pear Deck on this as well. So you will want to make a copy of this. I'm the owner of it, so I can do a little bit more in here right now than what you can, but you would want to make a copy of this. And we're usually go to add a new slide. As you can see here, there's a bunch of layouts here, AKA exit ticket prompts and templates for you to pick from. So it's this just master deck of exit ticket examples. So I can go through, I can customize things if I want to before I give it to my students. But I have all of these examples here, which is pretty cool. So it's really like, 12 to 15. I'm really bad at math, so I'm not gonna be able to count these very quickly. But several different exit ticket examples all in this deck. All right, other examples. This is one that someone built in Jamboard, I think. Yep. So if you've not used Jamboard before, it's kind of like a simplified version of Google Slides, in that you can add a background and the background sticks. So if you don't want people moving your pictures around like they can on a Google slide, Jamboard is for you. You can set that as the background here, and then people just stack stuff on top of it like what I did on this example. So you just have students add text, they can add Post-it notes, they can add pictures, or they can draw. There's a little marker tool, pen tool, and highlighter tool. So if you have more that you want to add to it, you can add more frames. You are limited. I think you can have up to 25, but I don't know if you would necessarily want to use 25 frames for an exit ticket. But this is just an example of one that you can use that's more of a Jamboard version. I would say Jamboard, a lot of primary teachers love that one just because there's not as many menus and buttons like there is on Google Slides. So it's more straightforward for the students on what they can do, easier to teach and front load some of those skills for them. So if you see other slides on here, these are just blank ones for you to grab and add your own examples. So another one from the section that we built, this is in Canva, and I'm going to show you that in a second here on how you can use Canva to make exit tickets. And there are tons out there. And then you can also use Google Forms too. So that's what this example did. This person made a Google form, but they even set it up so that it was in quiz mode. They didn't necessarily treat this as a true summative assessment quiz, but setting it up in quiz mode gives students instant feedback because it basically grades it for you. So not only do you get data as the teacher on student mastery of the goal, but the students get some information as well. And it just makes giving that feedback on the teacher side of things much easier and more efficient. So we're going to go into Google Slides so I can show you how you can build, sorry, not Google Slides, Canva, so I can show you how you can build an exit ticket from there. So in BCSC, we have a district K-12 Canva for Education account, which basically means that we get to leverage all of the Canva paid templates and premium templates for free because of partnerships they have with public schools in the United States. So when I get to Canva, you'll want to use your BCSC Google account to sign in. And if you're like me and you already had like a Canva personal profile before we set this up about 2 years ago, then I have to toggle back and forth between my profiles. And I want to be on the BCSC team so I can get all of those paid templates and features. So when I am here, you can see the one I made right there last time. But when I'm here, I can see all my past designs. But if I just want to see some exit ticket examples, I can search exit tickets, and there are so many that come up because teachers are using this tool more and more and more. And some of them are really great for printing already. This does indicate you'll have to chop some paper, but there are some great examples here. More of them are like a slideshow where you click through some of those things. Other ones are ones that your students will write out. It is totally up to you on how you would like to do this. And once you click one of these, you can completely customize it, make it to where it's whole page. You don't have to cut things out if you're wanting to do this digitally. There are tons and tons of examples on here. So I'm going to click this one right here, I think. And whenever you see one that you want, customize this template, opens it into this editing view. And on the left-hand side, there are more like similar type of designs that will pop up. All right, so if you like to see other options, then you have them there. But just know that if you're anything like me, I get really distracted by all of these templates and I think, oh my gosh, there's going to be an even better one if I just keep scrolling. And then a lot of time passes and I still haven't started working on it. So I like to hide that sometimes so I can focus a little bit better. But you can zoom in with the toolbar here. And what I need to do is I'll just leave these blank. Let's imagine that I'm like just printing this for students, or I can even delete this if I want. But right here is where I would ask students the exit ticket prompt for the day. So all right, so I type that out. This could maybe be where students write their answer. I'm just gonna delete this and actually change this to somewhere else because let's imagine that I want students to write out their response here. So I just click and drag to resize things. If I want to move this further down and ask a second question, I can do that. Start typing here. I can change some of my font and colors across the top. Type that out. Do that. And then I can go, keep on going, do whatever I want here. All right. So whenever I am finished with this and I am ready to send this to my students, I have a couple of different ways that I can do this. So I can certainly, just print this from here if I wanted to. But if I want to send this to my students digitally, so it's a little bit easier for me to collect, or, I don't feel like printing a bunch of paper, what I'm going to do is click the share button. Actually, I'm going to change the name of this first. Forgot to do that. And last thing I'm going to point out, this left-hand toolbar is where I can add in more media. So if I want to add in pictures, add more text, different shapes and artwork and things, I can do that. If I even want to change the template, again, that's where I can go and do those things. If you want more training on Canva, excuse me, I have even more available from other workshop sessions. So you can email me and I can send those to you. If you click the share button, this is where I get options to share this design. So you probably don't want to sit here and type in every single student's BCSC email address. So what I would do is you're going to want to send them the template link. The beauty of that is that they don't have to click file, make a copy to get their own. You won't get an email notification saying someone wants to edit your template. Instead, it's going to send them a forced copy. So if I click template link and click copy, then that's what I would share with my students. All right. So I'm going to add this to our combined slideshow deck. So you all have this as an example if you would like it. Right. And if you're wondering, like, how am I doing screenshots? You can use the snipping tool on your computer. It's just here if you type in the search bar, if you go to your Windows button and click programs, snipping tool, you can edit, paste, do whatever you need to do. I can paste it here. And then I'm going to give everyone that template link. So I'm going to copy that again. I'm going to link this picture so that if someone else wants to use this template, they can. So that is an example in Canva. The next example I'm going to show you is one that you could build in Google Slides. So if you want to make any one of these examples that are up here into a Pear Deck example to where maybe students respond on Pear Deck instead of you giving them a forced copy of these slides or printing things. This is what you can do instead. So what I will do is just make a copy of this taco slide. And what I'm going to say is we're going to use Pear Deck to respond instead. So I'm not going to say that. The instructions are there. And if you're not familiar with Pear Deck, we do have a make and take where you can make a Pear Deck activity for your students. That's from a few months ago, but there are more resources and training on that if you need it. But for sake of time, I'm just going to fly through right now. So to use Pear Deck, it's in Google Slides, so you have to be in Google Slides. And I'll click Extensions, and then Pear Deck for Google Slides add-on. It should be force installed, so you don't have to do any installation steps. But I'll click Open Pear Deck add-on, and a little sidebar is going to open to the right, because this application works within Google Slides to add a little bit more flair and interaction to our slide deck. All right. So when I'm here, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to actually pull from their library. They do have some great exit ticket templates if you want to explore those. And all you have to do is just click the one you like, and it adds it as a new slide into your presentation. But if I already built out my own slide, so I'm making my own little custom Pear Deck slide here, then I just want to add in the type of interaction that my students are going to have with it. So if you want students to be able to draw and to type on your slide, so if you want them to indicate how they felt and then add a couple sentences, you'll want to do draw. If you only want them to type, you'll do text, multiple choice, which isn't really applicable for this slide. They can enter a number. Website just means that you're sending them to a website, so it's not necessarily a response piece for them. But for this example, I'm going to make it draggable, so students will drag an icon over the taco that describes how they're feeling. So I'll click draggable, and it's going to open a menu here where I can configure how I want this draggable slide to look. So I'm going to change the way this looks, and I'm going to let's do a star. We're going to make that star big so it stands out to me and to the students. And I'm going to change that color to this so I can see it a little bit better. If I wanted to, I could add more icons. I think you can have up to 10 if I'm remembering correctly. But whenever I'm ready, I just click Update Slide, and it adds it. All right, so I see the instructions there for my students. And whenever I'm ready to launch this lesson for my students, I'll just do Start Lesson. And if you're wanting to do this live with your students, you'll do instructor paste. If you want them to do this on their own outside of class time, student paste, but we're going to do instructor paste. And it's going to give a code that students are going to use to join your session. So you have to have at least one student in the session to be able to participate. So you will have to get them going. You have students who are a little bit slower to join. They're still typing things. It does keep the code on the top of the screen so that they can easily go through and join even after you've moved on to the next slide. All right, so it tells me I have at least one student connected. I can give them this direct link as well. But whenever I'm ready to go, we're going to click through to wherever that slide was. Is the teacher, I'm controlling their slides right now so they can't move ahead of me. Again, that join code is still up there. And we're going to get to our taco slide. All right, so on the student screen, they're going to be able to drag and drop that star that we made onto their slide. So I'm going to say that I felt sleepy today. Okay, so I responded. And what I'm going to do is click Show Responses. And this is something that's only available on the teacher screen. They can't see other responses until I show them outside to the class. So I can see that. If I wanted, this will actually overlay every single student's response. If there had been more than one student, it will do grid layout. So I'll see a separate little screen here for each student. List layout just makes it a big scrolling one. But this is where I can see student work. If I want to add another question prompt, I can, maybe where I say, well, why do you feel that way? I could build this again on the fly. And whenever I'm ready to end this session, I'll just click End. You will want to give it a name. Probably something better than that. I would name it after the class period and the date, just so it's easier to organize. But when I click Save and End Session, I get this opportunity to reflect and review with my students, and then I'm done. And it basically saves it on my teacher Pear Deck dashboard to where I can go back and review all that information again. And it sends a copy of the students' responses to them so that they can see their mastery and their progression over time, and even use that as a note-taking tool afterwards. So that is Pear Deck in a nutshell. That is certainly a big enough topic to where it can be its own training, but I thought I would just show you an example there. The last example I'm going to show you is in Google Slides. So not Google Slides, Google Forms. So if you are wanting to make more of a formative assessment here that gives students instant feedback on an exit ticket, you can certainly do that in Google Forms. So I will open a form, and if I click my little waffle menu here, I can go to Forms. And what I will do is I'm just going to pull from this example that I built last time from the session. But I can type out instructions here, make this look however I want to, decide what type of questions I'm going to put in. I would say if you're setting this up to where it's going to automatically grade the student responses, that it's probably best to do multiple choice and or check boxes, which is multiple response, just because it's really hard to grade a short answer or extended answer response, even if you set up an answer key, because you have to type in every type of spelling variation that might be out there. Otherwise, it will count it wrong. So I usually like to stick to these more simple type of question sentence frames, but that is up to you. So I type out my question here. I make it required because we don't want students to skip it. And then whenever I want to make this into the quiz mode, or basically where it gives automatic feedback to students, I go to the settings menu and it's at the very top here, and I'll just click make this a quiz. And then you get some options here on how you would like to do this. So I like to give students the results immediately. If you want to be the gatekeeper of information, then you can do manual review, but I think that kind of defeats the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish here. I can do some examples here on how I want to give students the feedback and what criteria I want to show them. And you can even decide if there's points involved. So because this is an exit ticket and a formative assessment, I made all of the points 0, so it wouldn't freak students out. But you can set it up however you would like. If you're wondering what this locked mode is, basically that turns your quiz into where students can't open other tabs. That will only work when students are using Chromebooks and their BCSE Chromebook. Only works there. If they try to do this on the phone, or if they try to do it on a Windows device, because we still have some of those at the high school, you won't be able to effectively do that. So just a heads up there. So when I turn on make this a quiz, I'm going to go back to my questions, and now I get some more bells and whistles. So I can make an answer key and indicate what the correct answer is, decide if I want to add points to it or not. And then I always like to do this add answer feedback, but this is just my personal preference. So if you're done, you can click done. But if you want to add answer feedback, I can type out feedback for an incorrect answer. So I can say, try again. Check out this resource before you do. I can add a link here for maybe a resource we used in the lesson, a quick video explanation from me, whatever have you. I can also add feedback for correct answer. So if I want to say like, awesome job, or send them to a website or a video as well, I can do that and click save. So I would just go through, do that, click done. That question's good to go, and repeat that same process. So it's pretty neat, pretty cool, awesome thing to do. You could really build most of your lesson in a Google form if you would like, especially if you want to use this quiz mode feature, because you can add videos, you can add pictures and links onto a Google form. The new feature even makes it to where the links truly look like a hyperlink and operate like a hyperlink now. That was something that happened about a year ago. So you could build out quite a bit on a Google form and have it serve as your main lesson tool as well as an exit ticket along the way. So whenever I'm ready to send it to students, I click send. I always share the link and shorten the URL, throw that in your It's Learning or Canvas course, and you are good to go. So there we have it. That is exit tickets in a nutshell. So your to-do is to build an exit ticket. If you already were doing that along with me, that's great. Grab a slide here, put it on there, put your name in the speaker notes so I can give you credits and we can watch this repository grow and grow and grow. If you have questions, please let me know. There is an exit ticket that you need to fill out in this exit ticket session that is on the January exit tickets document that led you to this recording. And that is just an exit ticket form so that you get your professional growth points PGP emailed to you. So make sure you fill it out so you get those PGPs that you deserved. If you have questions, please let me know. If you have an idea for an upcoming Make and Take, let us know as well. Thank you for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.